John, you're talking about going for a bike ride today. It's 50 degrees for me. That's my cut line.
That's your cut line? Yeah, my group's cut line is 32 degrees wind chill. If it's below 32 wind chill, we won't ride.
Better man than I am.
He makes it sound like a fair weather fan.
Well, my best line I ever heard. I heard talking to a guy about golf one day. He says, I generally shoot in the low 80s. Anything colder than that, I don't play.
All right, so I'm just going to go over how we're going to handle the meeting this morning real quick because this is a rework. So I'm going to give some instructions because we are a virtual meeting and I'll take care of that part. And then once I've done that, I'm going to actually call the meeting to order and I'm going to just real quick go through roll call. And then you'll need to appoint a temporary chair to lead us through until the point that you elect a chair. Okay, so that will be our process for this morning. Any questions before we get started? Okay. Good morning. This is the Finance Committee reorg meeting for January 19th of Newtown Township. We are taking public comment today one of four ways. Public comment could have been dropped off in the blue drop box at the front of the township building prior to the meeting. You can, if you're on the Zoom call, you can raise your hand and be recognized. Or if you're on the phone via Zoom, you can also raise your hand to be recognized. There's a feature on the phone that allows you to do that. If by chance either one of those don't work, or you just want to make public comment via email, you can send emails to public comment at newtowntownship.org. It's public comment, all one word, at newtowntownship.org. We are continuing to do a hybrid model of both virtual and in-person through this recent uptick in COVID. So with that, I will call the meeting to order and do the roll call. Larry Fisher.
Present.
Jim Lanzato.
Present.
Ed Naples.
Present.
Lisa Pacell.
Present.
Alice Skoukas. Present. Your elected auditors, Smith and Weaver, are here. Township managers here. Finance managers here. And I do not believe either one of the
I'm seeing Tina, but I know Leonard had something work related this morning.
Yes, I did know that. So I'm going to put that Tina may show up. All right. So with that, if you would go through the process, either somebody volunteers to become the temporary chair and everybody agrees, or if you nominate a temporary chair and you vote on it, that either way is acceptable.
I'll nominate Jim Lanzato. Can he?
He can be the temporary chair, yes?
Should I accept?
Do you accept?
I accept
Okay.
this honor, my outgoing role.
And we have a second from Naples and Ed. So you want to go ahead and vote on that as a group, and then we can move forward.
Okay. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
All
So
right,
moved.
Jim, you're the chair. You get to take over the meeting at this point, temporary chair.
All right. So it sounds like the first thing we do is vote on a new chair. Is that
Well,
correct?
actually, you'll go through and do the moment of silence and pledge, and then do the approving of the agenda, and then do the.
Oh, so it'll be like run like a regular meeting. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So I declare this meeting open, and let's start with a moment of silence, if you don't mind. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. There we go. Thank you for the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic
Republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Do we go through old business and new business or go directly to the election of a new chair? Steve?
Just go ahead, actually, and start with the approving of the agenda. And then once the agenda is approved, then you go to the election of the chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Got it. Okay, let me,
Here, let me do this.
it's got to bring some stuff in front of me. Sorry about that.
Does that help? I might not have it shared. Hold on a second.
So is everybody's microphone on? I'm having a tough time hearing some people.
Is everybody's microphone green?
Yes.
Okay. I now have the agenda up on the screen.
All right, that makes it a lot easier. Thank you very much. Okay. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda of the previous meeting, which was held in November of 2021?
Actually, this is just to approve today's agenda.
Oh, this is, okay. Sorry, Mike, I'm a little. So can I have a quick motion to approve this agenda for this meeting, which you have in front of you right now?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. We'll move now on to the election of board officers.
You can take nominations for the chair. Typically, how we do that is once the nomination is made and seconded, then you just vote on it up or down. If it doesn't pass, then we would nominate someone else.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Floor's open now for nomination for chair of the Finance Committee for Newtown Township. Any nominations?
Jim, if you don't mind, I'll put forward your name as a chair candidate.
I'd offer a second to that.
So now we got to vote.
Does Jim have to
Jim, are you
accept?
still there?
I am, but I didn't hear anything though. Sorry.
Oh, I'm
Oh.
sorry. Hold on a second. Do we have, make sure you're.
Yeah, everything's green.
I heard it.
Okay. All right. Just make sure we're speaking into our mics.
Yeah, Jim, maybe you should check your volume.
So Jim, there was a nomination for you as chair
Even you.
and it was seconded.
Hi, Larry.
So I'm happy to continue if you folks are interested. Thank you.
We need to vote.
So we just
Yes.
need to go ahead and vote.
So all in favor?
Aye.
I take it nobody from my family's there, so no one's in opposition.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So let's move on to the election of a vice chair. Any nominations for the vice chair?
Who did it last time? Who's our vice chair?
I am.
Oh, they'll nominate Ed again.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations, Ed.
Congratulations, Jim. This is the old Groucho Bar.
In the case of my imminent demise, you have the opportunity to take over the role, so good for you. All right, now's the next is election for secretary. Any nominations?
Before we do that, a question, what is the role of the secretary specific versus the chair and the vice chair?
So the chair, obviously, their role is to run the meetings, and then the vice chair's role is to run the meetings in the absence of the chair.
Okay.
The secretary's responsibility is to make sure the minutes are taken, and I use that in quotes because my definition of minutes is not word for word. It's really just the actions that you take, and to make sure that we record those actions for the purpose of the future. And so that's the differences in the position. The secretary would work very closely with the township staff in making sure that the minutes are always prepared properly, ready to go for to approve at your next meeting. The chair's main responsibility is to make sure the agenda's together, and then to run the meeting while that's going on. And then obviously the vice chair fills in, when the chair's not able to be here.
Okay.
And that's currently Alex.
Yeah,
Okay.
so after the meetings, I go back and I type up the notes and send them to the township, who then distributes them to you.
Yes.
Would you like the role?
I'll take a turn. That's fine. I'll accept that. If you're nominating me.
I'll nominate you, yeah, and I just took the notes for the first half, so I'll send those to you. I'll type them up and send them to you.
I'll second
And-
Give me a
that.
second. All right.
So we have a nomination and a second of Lisa Purcell as the secretary of the Board of Officers. Any comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations, Lisa.
My lucky day.
Well,
Could be worse.
I will make note that we have 2 more committees that need to reorg. And once I have all the reorgs done, we're going to have a meeting of all the chairs and vice chairs. And then we're also going to have a meeting of all the secretaries to go through what needs to be done, how to get in and out of the system. And then if there are new members, in this case, there's no new members, Ed was a reappointee. We'll bring new members in to make sure they know how to get in and out of our software for the agendas, and anybody that wishes to come will be invited to those as well.
okay. So I take it, Steve, we move on with the balance of the meeting?
We do now, yes.
Okay. So is there any public comment right now for the agenda items?
I see no public comment in the emails. I'm coming back to the meeting, and I do not believe we have anybody in attendance, so you're good.
Okay, great. All right, so if you can scroll down the agenda for me, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Need to get rich back then.
Okay, if I can have a motion, please, to consider approving the minutes from the November 17, 2021 meeting.
So moved by Alex.
Second? Okay, all those in favor say
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Let's move on to reports. Rich, you have the floor.
Sure. So I want to just make note to everybody that we are reporting on November. If everybody recalls, the meeting in December was canceled. So I will actually report on this December at the next meeting, which should give us a bit closer to where we're going to end the year. But to start off, revenues are ahead by 645,000, and our expenses are up by 1.3 million for a net increase of approximately 700,000. Like we talked about before, of this increase, 215 or 16% is due to the transfers in capital. As everybody recalls, in 2020, there was a capital freeze. In 2021, there was not a capital freeze. And this difference is just us shifting money from the general fund over to the capital fund. Some transfers did take place in 2020, but the majority of them didn't. Some things such as the road program took place, but off the top of my head, that is the only capital expense that actually made it through after the capital freeze. So we'll just start on revenues. Overall, real estate taxes are up 112,000 in comparison to 2020. As of 11/30, there's still 101,000 in general fund taxes to collect compared to 152,000 at this point in last year. So we're ahead about $50,000 in collections. I just want to make note that I spoke with Marie yesterday, and she is very close to closing her books. If she didn't do it yesterday, she's going to do it today. And we only have about 48,000 left to collect, which is another outstanding performance for us. We usually lean somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 a year. So this is right on line with where we have been in previous years. Again, we're looking at upwards of a 98, 99% collection rate for our taxes, which is phenomenal. Another major increase you're going to see in revenues comes from our other taxes of about 890,000. The two main components of this are your real estate transfer and your LST. Our transfer tax saw an increase of 905,000. The two main components here are our mainline health building for about 395,000, and the other was the AB apartments for about 195,000. As I report pretty much every month since this has been happening, I'm sure everybody is aware of what's happening with the real estate market. More houses are going at a higher price. Therefore, our percentage is higher. In previous years, we collected between 70 and 80,000 in transfer tax. Now we're between 90 and 100,000. So with those two main transfers of the mainline health and the AB apartments, plus the increased in transfers as well as price, that makes up the 904,000. LST has actually experienced a slight decrease in revenue. Throughout the year, I've been reporting that LST is down and then it catches back up and then it's down and then it catches back up and it's down. This is a month that it is actually down. It's down about $15,000. I've sent an email to Keystone and I'm trying to get a report from them just to reconcile some things with our business license to make sure we're actually catching all the revenue that we're supposed to be from there. But as of now, it's about $15,000 down. License.
Rich, one of the things I thought about is we've had a lot of discussion about trend with real estate transfer tax. And what may be a helpful statistic is to slice and dice between residential and commercial under the theory that the commercials really are one-time transactions where you may have one large swing and then you may have a quiet period, as compared to residential where you're probably not going to see wild swings, so that you know really how much is with a high degree of certainty you're going to get versus what's really a variable in that stat. I don't know if you have it in being able to analyze it in that fashion.
So this is actually something that Steve and I have looked at before. I've requested files from the county to try to start manipulating the data. Unfortunately, all the county can hand over to me is either a paper copy or a PDF that I cannot use. I cannot convert into anything actually usable. But yes, that is something that we're aware of would be an extremely valuable tool to know. We're just trying to figure out how to actually capture that data without having to manually type in every transfer that happens in the township in a spreadsheet.
Yeah. And one of the things too that, just for us to be thinking about and be aware, Lister basically sold out last year. And I think they've either transferred everything to the owners or there's one or two that are left. So that's been a pretty steady number for transfer for us for about 6 years, 7 years. We also, the Ellis Preserve houses, there were 76 townhomes plus the 66 stacked townhomes. I think there's 3 or 4 stacked townhomes that haven't settled or, something like that. So We're going to see a change even potentially this year. We do have some other new homes potentially. You know, there's another 60 or so townhomes being built. I don't anticipate that many of them will close in 2022. So I think this next year is going to be an interesting piece, depending if there's a major commercial piece that transfers or not. It's going to get us probably closer to our normal,
The norm, the new norm,
the
right?
new norm for us. The other thing that I've noticed is that, and I don't know if anybody else has been kind of following this, but we hit that kind of spike last year with real estate being incredibly high.
Yeah.
I've noticed that it's starting to edge back down a little bit.
The papers are saying, right?
You know, so it'll be interesting to watch that number. We may need to be watching pretty closely for 2022.
So moving on, you'll see a slight decrease in license and fines. This is primarily due to alarm fines as well as state police fines. Although I can't really explain the state police fines because they come from an outside organization, I can look into it. The alarm fines we assume are down just because more people are home. If people are home, they're not setting their alarms, they're not tripping their alarms, therefore they're not getting alarm fines. So you'll see a slight decrease in that. Just interest is down about $20,000. I'm sure everybody here is aware of the interest rates, what has happened over COVID. State and local revenues is right on track with 2020. If you'll remember in previous months, this has always reported higher than before, and it was just due to a timing issue. Everything is in for 2021, and you're seeing that we are right on track with where we were last year. Another variance you'll see is other financing sources. This is I don't want to call it an issue. The situation with the school resource officer. The school resource officer worked more in 2021 than they did in 2020. Therefore, they were billed for more hours. As we discussed at previous meetings, there's some discussions with the school district of whether that money is recoupable. But at the moment, the school district has not paid that. Therefore, you're going to see a increase compared to 2020. The last major increase you're going to see decrease you're going to see in revenues is public safety. Unbelievable to say, but I have been reporting pretty much steadily every month that our public safety, which is primarily our permit revenues, have been above where we were in 2020. 2020 has finally surpassed 2021. Looking back historically, it looks like there were a couple big permits that came in November of 2020 that we didn't receive. One of which was Dunwoody's project in the tune, I believe it was close to $200,000. So overall, our permit revenue is down about $480,000 in comparison to last year. So overall, if nobody had any questions on the revenues, I'll move on to expenses. Spending is up, like I said, about $1.3 million. But the majority of that is accounted for two things. The first is going to be your capital expense. Like I spoke about before, we had a freeze, so we're showing about additional $215,000 in spending in 2021 that we didn't in 2020. In addition, the big number is the debt service payment that we speak about every month. We made a $505,000 debt service payment in 2021 that we did not in 2020. That since has moved over to the liquid fuels fund for the 2022 budget. So that number will actually decrease. But overall, looking at the other major variances in expenses, you'll see salaries, benefits, and personnel. They're up, and that's due to contractual police increases, as well as the timing, as well as other employee salary increases. In addition, we hired an additional staff member, and there's also a timing of the MMO. In 2021, we made our MMO payment at the last meeting in November. In 2022, we made our last MMO payment at the first meeting in December. So it's just a reporting issue. This number should get much closer towards the end of the year. And the other, I guess, major variance is our operating expenses. You're going to see that's up about 187,000. This is up overall. It's up across departments. Most of it is it's just general operating. For example, 2021 saw multiple snowstorms that 2020 didn't. So our salt and our snow cleanup line items are up. We had some street sweeper repairs that we needed to clean up from the 2020 incident. So overall, operating expenses are up about 187,000, but just to name a few, like I said, multiple snow and some repairs that we didn't have to do. But overall, like I said, we're up 1.3 million in expenses, but about 720,000 of it is accounted for transfers and the one-time debt service payment. So did anybody have any questions about the expenses? All right. That is all I had to report then.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, let's move on to new business. I guess what we need to do here is review the 2022 schedule. If someone can throw it up on the screen. Before we begin, I assume the library will not be having any carpeting repaired in 2022?
I'm hoping not.
Right?
It would
All right.
be a bad day if we have to do it again.
Maybe we'll just levitate everything next time, Stephen. All right, this follows the third Wednesday at 0800 schedule.
Yes.
Any comment, questions, concerns? Is this a motion-like thing, Stephen, or is
No,
this just
the
a?
Board of Supervisors has already passed this as your schedule. It's just mostly to let you know, and if is an issue that I can take it back to the board.
Okay. Got it. Let's move on then. All right, next thing up, we have some old business items. How do we want to handle that? Rich, you want to address these, or are we discussing them, or how are we moving forward with these?
Yeah, sure. So I can give a brief update on each of them. I believe 12.1 is kind of, at this point, it's being discussed, I believe, with the solicitor. If this board remembers, I believe it was the last meeting, if not the meeting before, we had a discussion about pilot payment in lieu of taxes, about how some individual organizations throughout the township were paying, I believe, minimal dollars for the services that they were being provided. One of the things that this board tasked us to do was go back and see if there's any way that we could possibly increase the amount or find a better way moving forward to address this issue. And if I am correct, I believe that this is being investigated by the solicitor. And if not, we can have the solicitor start looking into it immediately.
Wait a minute. That's not what we tasked the township with at the last meeting. What we discussed first was just getting a list of all the entities that are significant landowners that are nonprofits. And that was what I thought we were going to be reviewing today. And, you know, because that's something you could get through an open records request. That's not confidential information. So do we have that list that we could share? Because then I believe the discussion then to follow that Jim had raised at the last, I think it was Jim that had raised it. You know, how would we go about this? What are some thoughts? We were trying to be very careful about how we proceeded, but we needed the list first, and that's what we were waiting on.
Sure, you are 100% right. And if you give me 1 second, I can pull the list up. I apologize for not distributing it. I must have misunderstood.
Just to be fair, Rich, I don't think we got right into like, we need to get the solicitor involved yet or anything.
Yeah, I think
like
that there was some conversation that kind of came out of your all's discussion that potentially, I think maybe a board member or two from the Board of Supervisors started having the conversation. I'm not sure that it's really gone to the solicitor at this point. I know that it was a consideration just to see whether or not it's even viable. One of the things that was discussed was what has been discussed by the Board of Supervisors as well as you is, can you change what somebody's paying if it was part of an agreement prior? So in other words, we have an agreement with one of the landowners that it's at a specific amount. That's what's in their land development plan going back.
Yeah, sure. So
Probably 12 years. And the question is, can we ask for
Or is
a
that
change?
perpetuity?
Is
Or
that
it
in
a term?
perpetuity or can we
Right,
ask for
but
a
that,
change?
I think that was EA, right, in there, $10,000,
Yeah.
something like that. But the question was, my understanding of what we were just gonna do is first look at this list, discuss it, see what we could come up creative ways, because we didn't want it to come across as we're changing anything on anyone or that
Right.
we are penalizing anyone. I mean, we can obviously publicize this list all we want, and maybe affect some generosity in the hearts of some of these folks that are using the township services. So, I'm just bristling at the suggestion that anyone thinks we're doing anything more than taking baby steps here.
Let me just say that I believe that your intent is to take baby steps. I do believe a board member has suggested that we take a more serious look at a couple of these issues.
Yeah.
And I do apologize. You are 100% right. When Steve just said that, I kind of mixed this meeting up in my head along with some discussions that happened at a supervisors meeting and mismatched them. But to give you the list this year, I'm only showing 3 this year. One is from Episcopal for 10,000.
Rich,
Yes.
I think what they were asking for is a list of all of the potential landowners that are not paying taxes that potentially could be paying a pilot.
I 100% misunderstood. And I will circulate that out to everybody immediately after this, as I know exactly where to get the list. I just misunderstood what the board was asking for. I apologize.
Okay.
And Stephen, I don't know if you guys can hear me. It's Tina.
Oh,
Can
hi,
you guys hear
Tina.
me?
Yes, hi,
Good
Tina.
morning, everyone. Congratulations to Jim and Lisa and Ed. Thank you all for your service. I just wanted to kind of jump in on here, and being one of 5, I like the approach that you all are taking as opposed to, and I'll go back to the other board members. I think Alex is correct in that I think we should do this systematically as opposed to cherry picking. So I'll go back to the other board members and show them your notes from this meeting, because I think you're right. That's the better way to handle this. Again, I'm one of 5, but I like the direction that you're all taking right here this morning.
Great.
Thank you, Tina.
And like I said, I just made myself a note. I will get that list out to this group shortly.
Thanks, Rich. And then I guess in the next meeting, we can have the same agenda item and look at it there.
Yeah, and we'll try to get the list out to you ahead of time so that when you're here, you've already had a chance to review it, and then we can have a further discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I know where it's at. I have it. I just complete my fault. I just misunderstood what the board was asking for.
And Rich, if you could include the 3 that are paying something, just so that,
I can highlight them a different color or something along those lines so they really pop out at everybody.
cool, thanks.
So should we move on to 12.2?
Yes, sir, please.
So 12.2 has been something that we have been discussing for quite some time. I believe since Jim has became our leader of the finance committee, he has been a big advocate of setting goals and performance measures. Jim and I actually met for lunch one day and discussed some strategies and some possible ways to achieve this. Since the last meeting, myself and Steven has sat down with all the other department heads. We have set rough goals and performance measures. We're in the stages of finalizing them. I shared them with Jim in their infancy stage for review. Shot back a couple comments that they look good, send them over when they're done. But this is an ongoing task that we should have finished up before the next, knock on wood, before the next finance committee meeting. These need to be in our budget book if we plan on going for the GFOA Distinguished Budget Award again this year. So this is something that we will also probably discuss at the next meeting, as we will have a full list of goals and performance measures to report.
Great.
And last but not least, our capital improvement plan. As everybody knows, Ed and Lisa have been assigned to the capital improvement task force. One of the things that I believe that this committee made the recommendation to the board to spend the American Relief Act money in 2022 to address stormwater issues, and throughout 2022 have this committee as well as the subcommittee meet and formulate a long-term plan. At this point in time, we know our number for our current infrastructure. We are going to work with the engineer to get another list of projects that we need to improve, not just maintain, because currently we just have the list of what we need to maintain. So throughout the year, myself, Steve, Lisa, Ed, and this committee will be making suggestions to the Board of Supervisors about how we can combat the long-term stormwater plan, whether that's through fees or another way to combat the issue. But that is where we're at now. And I am going to schedule a meeting with Lisa and Ed immediately after this to get that back up and running. I would also like to report that the Board of Supervisors approved the $500,000 in the 2022 budget that was recommended by this committee to spend. So we do have the 2022 period to figure out how we're going to combat this at a long-term issue when we have all the numbers in front of us.
So I would also mention that the engineer, myself, and the Public Works Director have actually spent a fair amount of time over the last several weeks. And we're going to be presenting to the board on Monday night a list of our top stormwater projects that we think need to be done. I will mention that a couple of them involve the list that we had, that we got the dollars from, but some of them are actually more looking at new projects, particularly in the top 10. I will tell you, in the top 10, there's no question in my mind that we're looking at somewhere between $20+ million in the top 10. I think we had close to 30, 40 different projects that we think need to be done around town. We focused on what we thought needed to be done most quickly, where we would, and we, just so you know how we focused, and then we'll be presenting this to the board, like I said, on Monday night, but we focused on what we saw as infrastructure that was being undermined because of stormwater. So we have some roads that we're very concerned about. If we don't do some projects, that we're going to lose some roads over time. We felt like those are pretty high priority. Obviously, that's protecting township resources and doing that, and it protects all taxpayers. Secondly, we tackled where we have issues that are our stormwater is causing issues to people's property, focusing on the ones that are causing issues to people's homes. So if somebody's getting water in their basement, that's more of a concern to me than water that's sitting in their backyard. If we understand how we set the priority, we've said if somebody's having infiltration into their home, and it's potentially something that we're involved in, and not that it's necessarily the township's fault, but or the township has done anything wrong, but if we could make an adjustment to stormwater and make it better for them, we've said those should be priorities over somebody who has water sitting in their backyard, if that makes sense. We've also looked at and said, we have some stream bank erosion that's pretty heavy. So we've ranked that as well towards the top. But I can tell you the first 10 is either roadway issues or things that are directly impacting people's property that potentially is affecting, into their homes or into some piece of their property on there more than just water standing in their yard.
Steve, is there another committee that is looking at the capital projects, like, how to rank them, which ones are the most important, in keeping with the theme of staying in our lane? We're the finance committee, right? So our job isn't to figure out or to recommend what needs to be done in the township. In other words, we're worried, we're looking at how we're going to finance it, how we can
Right.
be creative about, coming up with money and keeping the budget balanced and all that. And so what are the different committees that are involved? For instance, and you said the top 10 projects are probably add up to 20 million. Like, who is there anyone else looking at that? Like what the top 10 projects are? Wouldn't be us.
No, for that purpose, it'll be the board. I mean, we'll take that back to the board and say, do you agree with our top 10 that we've placed out there? We'll show all the ones. What we basically did is we took every place we had a complaint in the township related to stormwater. And like I said, there were close to 40 of those. We determined that some of them were state issues that we personally can't do much about. We're not allowed to, I guess we're allowed to. We don't want to go on to state highways and start making adjustments, because then we take on the liability that we don't want to take on, if that makes sense. So we have probably about 10 projects that we're going to say, these are state projects, and we're going to have conversations with the state related to these. And we prioritize those, then we're going to have the board agree or not agree with our prioritization. And if they don't agree, then we'll take it, we'll go back and adjust those according to what the board says that they think are the highest priorities. And then we'll start having conversations with the state to address those. The others, we're going to come up with, my direction to the engineer was to start laying out what it's going to cost to come up with this list and get a real definite cost. 20 million is a great number, but we need to understand, is 20 million right? And then we're going to be back to you, bringing that number back after the board agrees with that and saying, all right, let's talk about how we try to finance this over a 5-10 year period. Or, we may look at all the projects and set a goal that, we want to have all the stormwater issues addressed in the next, let's say, 10 years. And if that's the case, then we'll probably talk to the engineer and say, now give us a projection of the other, 30 projects or 20 projects that are not in the top 10, what that's going to cost and how we start doing that. Some projects we know are not overly expensive. When I say overly expensive, probably can complete for less than $100,000. Other projects, we start looking at a neighborhood that needs stormwater repairs, and we're looking at the whole neighborhood. It might be $2 to $6 million, and that's why all of a sudden you got 4 or 5 neighborhoods in the township that have real stormwater issues. It doesn't take long to hit $20 million. And I may be underestimating hugely just on those projects, but sorry to say the money from the federal government isn't going to pay for all of this. We're going to have to find ways to finance it and look at it. So that'll really be the conversations that we'll be having with you. Hopefully, we're going to start having those conversations either in February or March, and that we have a plan before the budget cycle for 2023 of a recommendation of how we're going to start really looking at funding this going forward.
Excellent, thank you.
But the other part to answer your question is the staff is looking at long-term capital all the time and taking that back to the board. So it's not just stormwater. We're also looking at all the list of projects, and the board and us are trying to, work through what's the priority and what's the emphasis over the next year.
Over the holidays, since this really surfaced in the fall, I've had a chance through my network of friends, and I'm sure other people have also had just open discussions on information. And the folks that I talked to, and they're knowledgeable, were surprised, borderline shocked that the number was that big, because their kind of perspective is, well, we don't see it.
Yep.
And so how could that be? And so immediately, I think we're going to have a communication element to this that really is going to have to put it out there as to what really is this underlying issue. Case in point, I live in Green Country. One of the projects was identified in Green Country, and I'm pulling a number out of the air. I think it was $1.4 million. So my buddies, and we walked the neighborhood, my buddies pushed me like, well, where is that? I don't see $1.4 million. So that hurdle of where this underlying issue, where is it? And so we have to be cognizant of this, that because we know the number is so big, but we're going to have a big education element to this, and whether or not that's going to rest in combination with this committee, with obviously the Board of Supervisors, with Township Engineer, but we're going to need a communication vehicle on this, or you're going to hit a wall.
We have actually two issues very similar. This, and we have an issue with the municipal authority related to their bond. And I'll tell you, my whole approach to this is communication. We are going to try really taking care of this over a long-term type of approach before we ever try to implement it.
Right.
Going back to good marketing, they tell you need to get it in front of people at least 7 times before they pay attention. We're going to have to look at how to make sure that we get this in front of people at least 7 times. And that's not easy.
Right, people turn off, they do the, oh my God, here they come, they're gonna raise my taxes, right?
My guess is that we're gonna have to do 30 communication pieces to hit that number of 7, and to make, because people look at things differently, see things differently. Some of it could be through social media, some of it might be a letter directly to the house, some of it might be in a newsletter. So, we'll have to look at creatively how to do all of those things. But I think that, as we start looking at this, it's going to be kind of an eye-opening thing for a lot of people. And what I will tell you is, it's not unusual that most people don't understand that infrastructure that's under the ground is one of the most expensive things that the township has to deal with. Every community deals with this because, think about this. We soared a little over, I think it was 800 or 900 homes that are, current customers that for the western part of the township, and it was $33 million. Not only was it 33 million, but by the time we pay back the debt, it's $66 million. And that number, people don't understand, and when you start doing the math and dividing it by the number of customers, it's overwhelming. And so that's the challenge that we have before us, that, you know, between staff, between the board, between our committees, is how do we communicate this over and over and over and over and over again, so people understand we're not out just trying to raise taxes, or we're not out just trying to bring a ton of money in. There's serious projects. And it is hard because it's underground and nobody sees it, and they think, what's the problem? Unless you're one of the few homeowners that's having the problem, it's not a big deal, you know, and then it's a big deal. It's a real big deal. And you don't care if we spend 10 million or 100 million to fix it. You just want it fixed. And so that's the challenge.
I have a question. How much of the annual stormwater improvements are made by residents that are having work done?
So the two are kind of unrelated, if I can kind of say it that way. If you go and have work done at your property, you're going to really mitigate the fact that you've added 1,000 square foot of impervious coverage. You're not mitigating the fact that your house already has 2,200 square feet that it sits on, and then you have another, 500 for your driveway, So you're only mitigating what you're adding.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Typically, there's not a requirement to go back and mitigate your entire property on your property. That's not how our stormwater ordinance is written. It's just you're mitigating what you're adding. So that being the case, most of the time when a person does stormwater on their own property, they're really not doing a lot to assist off of their property. They're just assisting. They're just addressing what the future is, not what they currently are doing.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, yep.
Okay, anything else to discuss on the capital plan? Does anybody have any agenda items for the next meeting? Okay.
Can I suggest at the next meeting, can we just do a quick group review of the 2022 budget?
Yes, we can. And when you
Both
say,
operating in capital.
yeah, so you want to do the general fund? Do you want to do all funds? What are you actually looking to review?
Well, whatever the supervisors approved in December.
Okay, I can put a highlight sheet. I can provide budget and then have a highlight sheet for everybody.
Yep, and that'll be the foundation for our monthly reviews going forward.
I will get that added to the next agenda.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Anybody else?
It's Tina. I just want to thank all of you again for the great work you've all done, and we're really looking forward to this, your first full year as a committee. So thank you all again for volunteering, and we really appreciate all of your input and your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I have no gavel. Lisa, you have the gavel. Outstanding work.
Yes.
Thanks,
And by the way,
everyone.
we finished under an hour.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Thank you.
Be safe.